Welcome to our first executive meeting of 2026. We are here in the electoral room. We're just to remind you, with our usual preamble, that it's only executive lead members present in the room that are taking decisions at the meeting. Others in attendance are here to provide advice. There are no planned fire drills. And in the event of a fire alarm, please follow the fire exit signs and congregate in the car park. If anybody present might need assistance, please let a member of the Democratic Services team know. So the agenda and papers for this meeting have been shared on the Council's website in advance of the meeting. And just to remind colleagues that we recognise the importance of striking a balance between providing opportunities for the lawful expression of views and unacceptable behaviours or actions will lead to our meetings being adjourned. There will be a recording of this meeting. It will be published in due course. And we are using a hybrid format. So executive lead members and key officers are physically present in the electoral room, and others may be joining us remotely to speak on agenda items or just to observe. This meeting is being broadcast, and therefore other members of the public and partners can observe the meeting remotely. If you are joining us remotely, please can you only use the chat function for the purposes of this meeting. Please use the hands up function if you wish to speak. If that's not working for any reason, then just put a comment in the chat. And please only intervene and speak when my invitation, and if you're online, say your name before speaking. Otherwise, can we make sure that microphones and cameras are off? So we're moving on to apologies for absence. I believe both Federica Smith-Roberts and Count Mike Rigby have both fallen victim to the lurgy overnight, and I believe our chief executive, Duncan Sharkey, has also, I talked to him yesterday, and he was struggling hugely and is also poorly. So our good wishes to them for a speedy recovery. Certainly I had the lurgy before Christmas. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. Is any other apologies? Not seeing anybody indicating. Agenda item 2 is minutes of the last meeting. We've not got them at this stage due to staff illness. They will be available very shortly. So just to note that, and we'll approve them at our next meeting. Okay. And declarations of interest. Are there any items of interest that people wish to declare over and above their membership of town, city and parish councils? Not seeing any. So we move on to our public question time, and I'd like to invite Mr. Chris Mann to speak, please. Good morning, Chris, and Happy New Year.
Good morning. When Somerset Council was created, you inherited 800 million of debt and were tasked with saving 18 million annually, an undemanding amount for merging 5 councils into one with a 600 million budget. That should have been the priority, but instead there was no merger planning after May 22. In May 24, a 12.8 million pay offer for 49 senior officers and 152 other staff was approved, and 300 staff left in March last year to create a balanced budget. Initiating this redundancy programme before completing a transformation plan was surely a bad choice, because you lost good managers needed to run wider departments. Grant Thornton issued statutory recommendations 1 and 2 in January 25 to develop detailed saving plans at pace and detailed transformation business cases at pace. 1 year later, you're paying Newton Consulting up to 20 million for advice to improve services, enhance workforce experience, and thirdly, achieve long-term financial sustainability. 1 month before these detailed plans are needed, all they have come up with is a whole council diagnostic, much bigger than the failed Southwest one, to set up a programme for success by providing an evidence base of opportunities that improves outcomes and experience. The diagnostic output will inform the planning of the programme and provide insight to allow for the prioritisation and sequencing of the initiative to have the greatest short-term impact. This seems to be the complete opposite of working at pace. Grant Thornton have just issued SR1 and SR2, telling you again that you've still got it wrong. Surely, decades after the business advantages of the M5, PCs, remember them? Internet, email, mobile phones, sat-navs, and now smartphones, you have too many managers. Question 1. The programme requires a 3-to-1 savings to investment ratio to be successful, meaning 135 million in savings for the now 45 million spent. Currently, the report notes that a risk that lack of pace will result in missing this target. What specific services are lagging, and what is the plan B if the 135 million target isn't met? Question 2. How much of the transformation budget is currently being paid to Newton Consulting versus being invested in internal staff, capability and technology? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mann. First of all, Councillor Liz Lycombe to respond, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Mann, for your questions. Some of your introductory statement has been covered already by answers sent to you following your questions at full council on the 17th of December, and also addressed at audit committee meetings during December. So I do recommend the audit committee meetings as well as full council and executive. Many councils working now on local government reorganisation are facing up to what is anything but a perfectly normal business merger, as you referenced in your written question, but that you didn't read this morning. They are now looking to Somerset Council for evidence of our actions taken from 2022 onwards. I have found it personally instructive to hear former leaders of other councils refer to a period of 8 years and sometimes more, i.e. 2 political terms, as necessary to create a stable, sustainable council. And that was before the increase in demand for and cost of adult placements, children's services and homelessness, and before the impact of austerity, before the global pandemic, before Brexit, before increases in interest rates and inflation. So on your question 1A, each of the business cases brought forward as part of the transformation programme will be judged on its own merits by the Inspiring Innovation Board and then approved by the Assurance Board, which includes executive lead members. The Assurance Board is held to account by corporate and resources scrutiny. Those business cases will set out the financial and non-financial benefits to be delivered, detailed plans with milestones and the investment needed. Taken as a whole, we will be seeking over a period of 3 to 4 years a return of £3 saved for every £1 invested. The ambition is realistic and achievable based on the experience of many authorities up and down the land. Chair, I'm going to have to ask for your forgiveness that I'm probably going to run over my 2 minutes, but I think it's really important that we address these questions.
I think it's important I'll give you longer.
Thank you very much. So it is obvious that some business cases, for example, the Modern Data and AI Council business case, will be enabling in nature and not achieve the stated return on investment when considered alone. However, those enabling actions will allow other business cases to achieve greater savings, leading to that average of 3 to 1 return on investment for the whole programme. I am confident that we have the right approach on business cases from our interim Section 151 officer, who has considerable experience in the area of financial challenge in big unitary councils. For your question B, on how much of the transformation budget is currently being paid to Newton Consulting versus being invested in internal staff capability and technology. I will quote first the press release that was published following the decision to appoint Newton Consulting, taken at the executive meeting in October. Quote, "The first phase will cost up to 1.5 million, with the total contract value capped at 20 million over the full term, with any further phases subject to future decisions. In line with best practice, the contract is expected to return between £2.50 to £3 for every £1 invested. So far, we have agreed that fee of 1.5 million for Newton for the diagnostic part of the transformation programme, due to be delivered by the end of this month, January 26, and an update on that work, of course, is covered by agenda item 9 today. Regarding our own staff capability and technology, you may recall the pay and reward programme full business case decision taken by executive here in November of last year. The costs of that programme are across external partners, our own team of experienced officers, legal and other resource costs. The total amount quoted, including our own officers, is important because the funding mechanism possible is different when the result is transformational in nature, i.e., it can be funded by flexible use of capital receipts. The most important part of any transformation programme is that the knowledge and experience brought by consultants is transferred to the council and its team of officers, so that the council and its staff can deliver improved services and continue to deliver those improved services. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much for that response, Councillor Elisha. Just a couple of points I just want to clarify, if I may, and if I could draw on officers' wisdom, if I might. First of all, can I just clarify, remind me the savings that have come about through local government reorganisations since vesting day? And I'm also struck by the phrase that no merger planning took place after May 22. Mr. Jones, I wonder whether you'd like to comment on that.
Thank you, Chair. Happily. We know that following the assessment of the level of savings since vesting day, we are now in excess of £50 million worth of savings as a result of the additional restructuring that took place.
Sorry, can you repeat that figure?
Around in excess of £50 million, and that's been stated publicly previously, Chair.
Okay, so that's 50 million over how many years?
Since vesting day, Chair.
Since vesting day. Okay, I think we can do some maths there, can't we? That we have exceeded significantly the savings on LGR. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you. And this point about no merger planning after May 22, please.
The programme planning associated with LGR was set out the back end of 2021, moving into 2022. The executive the executive board for LGR agreed the merger plan effectively in May 2022. That was then reviewed in September. We then had an independent review of that with the LGA, and they gave us a reasonable bill of health associated with our merger planning ready for vesting day. And of course, vesting day happened on April the 1st, 2023, with no disruption to service that was reported through our performance reporting, Chair.
Thank you very much. Facts are important, I believe. So we move on to questions from members, and just to advise and remind members of the protocols that go behind questions from members of council to the executive that I referred to at our last meeting. Councillor Diogo Rodriguez, your question is first.
Thank you, Chair. Last year, this administration sought and received government permission to raise council tax by 7.5%, having originally requested an increase of over 20%. We did ask at a couple of occasions in meetings whether a specific figure had been asked, and that wasn't made clear, and we only found out about that 20% figure through a freedom of information request. So I'm hoping we don't have to go down that route, and leader will give me, or deputy leader will give me an answer today. This year, members have been advised that balancing the budget again relies on council tax rises above the 4.99% referendum limit. I understand that Somerset Council's approached government about a council tax increase of around 10% for the next year. Can the lead member confirm whether that figure is accurate? And if not, what is the maximum percentage increase that has been requested or discussed with government? Thank you.
Just first of all, can I just refer you back to the answer I gave you at our full council? I can't remember the date, but it was at the cricket club, in which I explained that that 20% figure was part of a negotiation rather than an actual proposal that you. And I know you're framing it in that way, but it's part of our discussions with government. We will discuss. We will put forward a range of figures before we make any decisions. Councillor Lation.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Rodriguez, for your question regarding our application to government for a third year of exceptional financial support. Last year, as you've mentioned, we submitted illustrative figures on council tax increase from 1% above the referendum limit to the 20% plus figure that you quote. That figure was an illustration for government of what would be necessary to close the budget gap by council tax increase alone. This year, we have submitted an application for further capitalisation directive up to, but not exceeding the amount of capitalisation directive agreed by government for 24-25 and 25-26, not required, and so rolled forward. That seems to me a perfectly reasonable approach, one that is on the right trajectory to a budget for 27-28 without one-off monies, but which does not require a new decision by MHCLG, but rather a reaffirmation. Government are using in their distribution of grant funding nationally a standardised figure of 2,060 as being the 26-27 Band D council tax for all unitary councils with 100% collection rate. As the current Somerset Council figure for council tax, even after the additional 2.5% increase agreed last February, is circa 1,857. So you can see that Somerset's council tax income is still considerably below that of neighbouring and comparator councils. As last year, we've submitted to government illustrative figures of a council tax increase in excess of the referendum limit up to 5.9% above the 4.99 referendum limit in order to reach that government figure of £2,060 for a Band D in a unitary council. Council tax Band D figures for neighbouring councils in the South West demonstrate very clearly the effect of the 6-year council tax freeze. And in my written answer to you, I will provide those figures in a table that includes those councils that are well above Somerset for a Band D, including Dorset and the average for Devon, because Devon, of course, is still 2-tier councils. The national average, that figure that the government have given us of 2,060. Wiltshire, which is just a bit above Somerset. Other councils, including North Somerset, that are actually below Somerset, and Somerset's own figures. So that will come to you in the table as part of the written answer, and I will get that to you as soon as I possibly can. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Liz. Just to reiterate, our council tax is lower than Wiltshire, it's lower than Cornwall, it's lower than Devon, it's lower than Dorset, it's lower than the national average, it's lower than the government standardised figure on which we are based. We are dealing with the legacy of a 6-year council tax freeze, and that is the root cause of the financial emergency. It's a tough gig to be able to resolve that financial emergency, but one that we are very much stepping up to the challenge of being able to do, because we want the decision making made here in Somerset about Somerset taxpayers' money and Somerset services. Thank you. So we're moving on to our next question, which is from Councillor Bob Filmer.
Morning, leader. Sorry to not be with you this morning. Unfortunately, I've got to head out a site visit to look at drainage matters somewhere in my patch for soon. So hence I'm online. Thank you for calling me and asking me to ask the question. I'll summarise the question I submitted. It's basically to ask the executive member for Waste Services the cost of the recent food waste recycling advertising campaign and how those were broken down between the TV campaign and social media. How many food waste bins and caddies have been issued since that, and how that compares with previous years, and how we're going to measure the success of the campaign and its value for money, and when those results can be made known. Thank you very much.
Chair. And thank you, Bob. This is a really great opportunity to talk about one of Somerset's greatest success stories, which is our recycling rates, which are recognised not only across the industry, not only across the country, but actually worldwide. Somerset has been recognised for its ability to do more, go above and beyond on recycling, and and the story which it tells is a story of Somerset and the people of Somerset that really understand the importance of recycling. So to answer your question, so this year's campaign was delivered with Suez, and we focused on reducing and recycling food waste. Waste analysis show that 21% of residual waste is food waste, and so targeted action was decided that was the direction we're going to go this year. So the campaign was funded through the SWEEP Fund, as SWEEP stands for Somerset Waste Education and Engagement Programme. And it's a ring-fence pot created from recycling income, not council tax or core revenue. This ensures recycling income is reinvested into environmental projects. So we produced a food waste focused collection calendar. We engaged with over 2,100 households, ran social media campaigns, and launched streaming adverts on ITVX and YouTube in December. The costs for this, the advertising costs were capped at £3,000 for ITVX and £5,000 for YouTube, with £10,000 for production. Social media spend was £200 and supported by in-house design. So the impact so far, so since June, food waste caddy orders are up by 113%, and the 23-litre bins are up by 66%, which which adds 418 cubic meters of capacity. Recycling box deliveries rose by 38%, adding another 1,087 cubic meters. So in total, that's 1,500 cubic meters, about 45 shipping containers, and a clear sign of increased engagement. To define success, that's always a difficult definition, and I appreciate, but we do need to do that. So success means sustained increase in food waste tonnage and reduced residual waste. So early data shows a 5% rise in food waste collection, which is 458 tonnes, and it's a plateau in residual waste. It's too early to measure the impact of December's adverts, but we'll review performance in early 2026 to assess value for money and future strategy. This is obviously the first time that we've used ITBX for these campaigns, and we will be monitoring how well it's achieved anything. But I would just like to say again, the work that's been done by Somerset Council on recycling is incredible, but it's pushing against an open door. The people of Somerset absolutely love recycling. We live in a very low country. We understand the impacts of this type of stuff very well. And it's the people of Somerset that make these figures absolutely brilliant. So thank you very much for the question, Bob.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Thank
and good
you.
luck looking at your drains as well. We
Thank
always
you,
do a good look at ditches. I spent yesterday morning reporting potholes in North Petherton. It's funny, the glamorous side of being a councillor doesn't often get reported, does it? Thanks very much, Bob. So we move on to agenda item 6, which is our forward plan. Are there any comments from lead members on the forward plan? Nobody's spotting anything. Any other members in the room or online? Good morning, Mark. Councillor Healy.
Yeah, good morning,
Happy New
Chairman,
Year.
and Happy New Year to you all. I don't know, I've just jumped the gun here because I wanted to talk about this business of the drug and alcohol treatment abuse, but I think somebody might be talking on it.
You've jumped the gun.
Thank you. Always ahead of the game, Chairman.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
no jumping of guns allowed. We move on to agenda item 7, which is the award of contract for drug and alcohol treatment services. So stand by your microphone, Councillor Healy. Can I just highlight that there is a confidential appendix around the commercial elements of this. If anyone needs to discuss the commercial details, please let me know in advance, and then apologies, we have to clear the room of press and public if we do that. If we can avoid it, and we usually do, that would be appreciated. So, okay. Oh, I've just been Councillor Liz Lasham, as always, keeping me in line. There is a supplement with an updated report that was published outside of the full council papers as well. So there is an additional report to note as well. Okay, Councillor Oakes is leading on this. Good morning, Graham.
Good morning, Chair, and Happy New Year to you and everyone else. I was discussing this with a family member the other day and was explaining how important it was. And he said, it was my son, he said, you do all the sexy things, don't you? And I went, well, some things matter and some things save lives. And, you know, I'm not expecting to get the front page of the Leveller or anything else. But this is a very, very important decision. So I'm pleased to be here this morning talking about this. The drug and alcohol service is provided by a national charity. We commissioned a charity called Turning Point in Somerset that operates as the Somerset Drug and Alcohol Service, or ESTAS, as we like to say. And ESTAS provides life-saving care to those affected by drugs and alcohol, and has demonstrated good service provision across Somerset. Improvements to servicing and quality of care are always ongoing, and accessible and quality care for those affected by substance abuse and reducing the harms related to this is a high priority. The point about this I wanted to make about being able to improve the service, the way that the government has changed the funding for this and that it's now a 3-year deal allows them to invest and us to commission with confidence and expect even further improvement. So well done the government for coming for a more sensible way forward. The contract award decision is being taken proactively before our existing contract ends, and that's to avoid a breach of our own rules on procurement regulations, to demonstrate compliance and transparency. The contract award is fully compliant with PSR regulations. Basically, the problem is caused by the fact that they're looking at a 3-year contract pushes the numbers up, when in reality, if you do it divided by 3, we would have been compliant. So it's a process issue. The more important thing is the fact that this service is vital to the people of Somerset. And when we talk about the people, we're talking about 5,000 people in Somerset who are dependent on alcohol, and 2,000 people who are opiate or crack cocaine users. Now, if you look at that as a percentage of the Somerset population, these are small numbers. But if you look at that in context of individuals, on families, on businesses, and everything else affected, it is a major issue for this county. And it has to be addressed, and people need to be supported and helped. And this service is vital in doing that. It literally does save lives. So on the 19th of December 2025, we were advised that the public health grant and the supplementary drug and alcohol funding would be provided over 3 years, with the government giving a guaranteed national fund for drug and alcohol treatment. This will improve the service. It will allow confidence in planning and going forward, both for the charity and for Somerset Council. It is important that we address this morning and get on, continue to work on, but improve the service that these people need. And I'll hand you over to the person who really understands this in depth, and that's Nina.
Great, thank you, Graham. I do have some slides, so I'm going to attempt to share. Bear with me. Okay, halfway there. There we go. Hopefully everyone can see those. Morning, everyone. My name's Nina Putness. I'm a public health consultant, and I'm here with my colleague Jodie Redding, who is a public health specialist, and we're in the drug and alcohol team in the public health team here in Somerset Council. And today we're looking for approval to award the contract for drug and alcohol service to our existing provider to continue delivery to Somerset residents and to provide continuity of care for a group of people really requiring consistency in their treatment and recovery. So just to go backwards a little bit, drug and alcohol treatment services are a local authority commissioned service, so across the country. So Somerset Council does already commission specialised drug and alcohol services. We currently have over 2,600 adults and 175 children in our specialist treatment services. But as Graham mentioned, there are more people that require care. So we're always working with other organisations across the NHS, police, probation, in order to improve that access to care and make sure that people are receiving the treatment they need. This service has been commissioned by Somerset Council since 2014 to an organisation called Turning Point, as Graham mentioned, a national charity that provides support and care for people affected by substance use. On the right here, you can see the national 10-year strategy from harm to hope. And a lot of our work on drug and alcohol is guided by that. And of course, the additional supplementary national grant that we receive because of this as well. So a little bit about our service. So Somerset Drug and Alcohol Service, or SDAS, as Graham said. This is an all-age county-wide service across 3 hubs across Somerset, plus a significant amount of outreach into community venues and also onto the streets for our rough sleepers as well. This provides specialised, tailored clinical and psychosocial support for people. It also provides harm reduction support. So that might be, for example, naloxone to reduce deaths from overdose, or needle and syringe exchange services, things like that. We have specialist services for children and young people. So that 175 people I mentioned on the previous slide, really closely linked to family safeguarding services and children's social care here in the council to provide that holistic care for children and families that they need. SS also supports people on release from prison to provide continuity of care that for those people in custody, and also those serving community sentences to avoid prison for people that have drug and alcohol issues. ESTAS also do lots of campaigns and public engagement. You can see some of the resources here on the right of this picture. They also work really closely with clinical teams across the NHS, so Somerset Foundation Trust in our primary care. And as Graham has also mentioned, we are continuously working on improvements of quality of care and always striving to provide the best offer to our populations here in Somerset. So a little bit, just really briefly, about procurement regulations. So as I said, this is a recommissioning of a current service, and it uses something called Provider Selection Regime, or PSR regulations. So these are relatively new, 2 years old now, came out in January 2024, and they stipulate that organisations, they refer to them as relevant authorities, are required to follow the PSR when arranging healthcare services, and local authorities are deemed a relevant authority. So in other words, Somerset Council needs to use PSR regulations when commissioning healthcare services. So in scope are all services that provide treatment, diagnosis or prevention of physical or mental health conditions. So that does include our drug and alcohol services. And they need to abide by 3 criteria. We need to abide by 3 criteria in order to use these regulations. One is there is an existing provider for these healthcare services and their contract is ending. That is true in our case. The proposed contracting arrangements are not changing considerably, and that's true. The contract remains largely the same. And finally, the existing provider is satisfying the original contract and is likely to satisfy the proposed contract to a sufficient standard. So we did a thorough assessment of ESTAS performance, and it was evaluated as good. Therefore, we could go ahead and use a direct award process C. So direct award means we are allowed to recommission Turning Point without going out to tender, following these regulations. So just in case this all sounds a little bit familiar to you all, you may remember agreeing to a previous very similar contract award in February of 2025, so almost a year ago now. But as Graham has mentioned, since then we've received new information from national government, and that is our supplementary drug and alcohol funding has been announced for 3 years, which is fantastic news, and that was only really confirmed less than a month ago. However, that does mean that had we added this additional funding over the 3 years to the contract that we agreed in February 25, we would have been in breach of procurement regulations because it would have gone over the 25% threshold that we're allowed to add to the core contract financial envelope. So this new contract that we're discussing today completely avoids that breach by incorporating that additional funding from the get-go, most of the additional funding into that core contract financial envelope, making sure that we're fully compliant. So finally, bringing us to the decision today, just to say that we are asking the executive to agree to the direct award of the delivery of our specialist drug and alcohol treatment service to our current provider, Turning Point, here in Somerset, branded as Somerset Drug and Alcohol Service, or ESTAS, from the 1st of April 2026 for 3 years, with an option to extend for up to another 3. We as officers have completed necessary due diligence and complied with all the advice provided. And also, as mentioned previously, there is a confidential appendix with all of these details that we could discuss if needed. But that is, I think, quite enough from me. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Nina, and thank you, Graham, for bringing this forwards for us. I had the privilege and was very humbled to be invited to an ESTAS mental graduation event a couple of years ago at the Quaker Meeting House, and the stories that were told by those graduates of the scheme, those people who have been struggling with addiction issues, and the journeys that they have made was absolutely, it was incredible. It was a real tearjerker of an event, and the impact that this service had on those lives was phenomenal. So, extend my thanks to all those people who have been delivering this and continue to deliver this over the coming years. And this issue has affected my family personally through my late sister, and do do really appreciate the work that goes on. I'm also very aware of the impact that addiction issues have on our wider service as Somerset Council. So very much see this as a prevention initiative. I think it's very worthwhile to just take a moment to think about the impact this service has on our spending in adult social care, children's social care as well. That has a huge amount of impact as a preventative service. And when we talk about transformation, a lot what we talk about is getting into that preventative area of work for the council. Councillor Wakefield first.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm absolutely delighted to hear about this, really pleased to hear about it. I think that the 3-year money, which is probably transformative in all sorts of ways in planning people's care over a much longer period. I'm really pleased to hear about that. The work that can be done with our housing team with complex cases, just about to launch our trauma-informed care, all that is going to be so good. And dovetailing of those teams, I'm really pleased to hear about. I also wanted to say, actually, just as a sideline, I actually acted for Turning Point when I was a solicitor in London in the 1980s, buying premises for them when they were starting up or quite newly formed. And they're a very long established service, and I'm glad that we have a long-term relationship with them here in Somerset. The only thing I wanted to ask actually was about the prevention side. I don't know, because I don't know enough about this, whether there's any evidence that the work you have to do with young people in schools, the work you do with people generally about prevention, do we know whether that makes a difference? Do we know what impact it has? Because that is so important across the board, as Bill was saying just now about prevention, trying to stop people getting into that way of life, if we possibly can, as well as helping them out of it.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Wakefield, for the question. It's a really important point, actually. There isn't a clear evidence base about what determines what will stop children and young people engaging in substance use activities. But what we do know is the adults that we see in treatment have often had really traumatic events happen in their childhood. And so I think the preventative approach is making sure that we really reduce adverse childhood experiences and for adults as well, because actually then people won't resort to substance use as a coping mechanism. And I don't know if Jodie and Nina would like to add to that, but that is definitely my view. The second thing I wanted to say about your housing comment was that we have held back a little bit of the supplementary funding. We haven't included it in the main contract award because we recognise now that we've got those 3 years of funding, we can actually engage with housing colleagues and the NHS and do some transformation work around our offer for rough sleepers and people on the margins. So I think less good news on the evidence base around prevention in children and young people. A lot of our children and young people are drinking less actually through choice, but it's still concentrated amongst our children who have significant adverse events in childhood.
Can I just add to that? And so essentially, whilst this isn't particularly directly in scope of Turning Point and Somerset Drug and Alcohol Service, their involvement in the Strategic Drug and Alcohol Partnership, which is the wider platform whereby we might look at prevention, where we've got children's services engaged, we've got criminal justice services engaged, we've got houses and services engaged. It's their connectivity, I think, with those wider services that you can have a more systemic approach to the prevention strand. So it's well on our agenda, and the specialist service will have a role in that, because prevention is not wholeheartedly just about stopping children doing it in the first place. That's our obvious default position, but there's something about addiction not escalating. There's lots of layers to prevention, and there's different pieces of research that lean into that. So it's just being aware of all of those.
Thank you very much, Jodie. Heather.
Just very quickly to say, I was supportive of this in February 25, and I'm supportive of it again now, and it's great to have it fueled by more money. I think that's always lovely. So you'll get my hand up when it comes to putting it forward and proposing it, very important. I think the emphasis on the prevention stuff and the collective kind of system approach is really important. It is interesting. One of the things I learned just in the serious violence interventions around serious violence in children by looking at things like the Youth Endowment Fund, how complex it is, and where the things you think will work, surely that would work, those interventions don't always work as well as you could. So I think the data as it comes forward is so important to know what works. I think also the data that's already in the paper is really important about what age of people are doing what in terms of the breakdown between about the substances. So I think it's all good. My only one question, which I probably should have asked in February, you mentioned about the support for people from community to prison. And I guess I'm hoping that it's implicit that the support for people coming out of prison and staying clean, let's say, if that's also included in some of these things, because it wasn't explicit, but just to make sure it's there.
Thank you. Yes, it's continuity of care is the term that we use in terms of how people are transitioning from being in prison, in custody with a treatment need, so using with an addiction problem, and when they come out in the community. We have had significant challenges with that. If I'm really transparent about that, partly there have been lots of national early release schemes. We'll all be aware of that on the news. So the usual level of in-reach and pre-planning that a treatment service would do with other partners, criminal justice services are key in that. So it's an indicator that's sort of lands with specialist drug and alcohol service, but it's a much wider indicator than that. It's much more reliant on that systemic approach that you've mentioned. So it's absolutely, prison leaders are a priority group for us. We are doing everything we can. Some of it's beyond our control in terms of those early release schemes, and that challenge then in planning when people are being released from court on the day with no prior knowledge for people that need methadone scripts. It's practically, there are lots of things that we know we could do to kind of solve that. We've got an action plan around that, but it's just mobilising that. But thank you, that's a really good point.
Thank you. And thank you for sort of highlighting those sort of impacts further afield. I do remember in a past life when I was head of year 10 and organising a health PSHE curriculum, bringing in the education programme that Broadway Lodge in Weston-super-Mare run into the secondary school, and the impact that had of people sharing their real life experiences with teenagers that were starting to look at using alcohol and drugs and to appreciate the choices they make, maybe taking them on an interesting journey. I did mention the impact on adult social care and children's social care. Of course, should have also mentioned the preventative impact on our friends and partners in the health service, and particularly, I'm particularly mindful of our friends in the ambulance service, but also the police and criminal justice system as well. The more we can do to prevent alcohol and drug abuse, the more impact we have on the system wider afield. Okay. If we move on to no other members of the executive are indicating, so I now have a fantastic choice of people who are wanting to speak. I'm Mark. You were gun jumping earlier. Did you still want to?
Yes, Chairman, if you don't mind, I think it's a very important subject, and I totally support it. Obviously, Councillor Oates made a very noble dialogue of it all, and I'd like to support that. But also, it's a very serious subject. We need to support this totally. I've talked to Nina at great length. I'm not going to go on about personal things that's happened to my family. That would be unfair on my family. But it goes across the board. Not only does it affect people with drugs and alcohol problems, but it affects their families, their friends, their relatives, etc. But the reason I want to talk about a certain matter, if you don't mind, Chairman, and I do want the media involved, I want them to listen to this, it's the new problem that's going through our schools, our universities, with young people. It's called ketamine. Ketamine is a drug, and if you don't mind, Chairman, Leader, through you, I'd just like to quote, ketamine is a dissociative anaesthetic. It comes from it has hallucinogenic effects. It distorts perceptions of sight, sound, and makes sure the user feels disconnected. taking ketamine can make you feel dreamlike, detached, chilled, relaxed and happy, confused and nauseating. Now, if you take that through our schools, not only in Somerset, but through nationally, and I know the government has got a scheme going, which I'm grateful for. I think as a council, we cannot afford not to support this for the next 3 years. I don't know whether I'm supposed to declare an interest. My wife works for Dorset Healthcare in the mental health. Whether I should declare an interest or not, I don't know. But what I'm trying to get over, and I'm trying to let this council know, ketamine is ineffective. It's affecting all our children. You know, drug dealers are there within our schools. I know the schools are trying to attract people's attention to it. So education, education, education all the way. So I'm very supportive. I won't say any more, Chairman, but I'd like the media through Somerset Council, throughout my colleague in front of me, to get it out in the open. Let it be known what's going down. Otherwise, our young people will be affected totally. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Healy, and absolutely endorse and echo your comments. I referred to the steps I took when I was ahead of year, far too many years ago now, but that was as a response of room and ketamine use that we'd heard, and that was one of the direct triggers of we need to do something preventative around this. And yeah, I'm sorry for the dig, Daniel, but I think this is a more interesting story than what the council spends on laptops. So I hope that we see this this reported properly, and so that people can see the good work that the council is doing. Alison.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Councillor Healy, for your support with this decision. It's really important that all areas of Somerset are reached with this service. So we need cross-party support. Regarding your points around ketamine, I absolutely share your concerns. Having been out in Glastonbury recently and seeing actually the impact of ketamine use, people living on the street, and also its wide accessibility in our communities. I'd like to reach out to Daniel Mumby and say if he would like some information around ketamine, and we as a public health team can support producing some factual information to help raise awareness around the concerns of ketamine for young people, because its use is increasing. And actually I've used it as an anaesthetic in developing countries. It's absolutely terrifying seeing people under the influence of ketamine as an anaesthetic, and that's in a hospital setting. But actually if it's being used recreationally, it has devastating consequences. And we really need to get ahead of that. So I'd be really happy, and the team would be very happy, Daniel, to get some information out in our local media about the harms of ketamine.
Thank you. Jill was next on my list. I've now got Jill, Tom, John and Lucy. Can we just make our comments brief as possible? I appreciate this really topic, but if I'm going to squeeze you all in, you've all got to cozy up.
Okay,
Jill,
thank you very much. Thank you. Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you. This is a really important subject area, and I actually mirror what everyone else has said. I think that the proposed contract has not been scrutinised by the committee, but it was. I did look at it. I did look at it in great depth, and I'm happy. But what I wanted to say was that I find it difficult to think this is a contract that comes in. I think this should be part and parcel of our adults and health and children's health. It should be sat in there. This is the most important issue at the moment. I think it's up there with everything. So I feel slightly embarrassed in a way that people have to come for a contract. I know that's the way it works, but I actually think this should be sat in there. This should be there all the time. We'd love very much for it to come back to scrutiny. Really, as a critical friend, I would like to see some success stories. I would like to see some of the journeys that people have had. That would be really, really good for us to understand. And I think my committee would really like to hear some of the successes and some of the not so, but to let us be there understanding all of this properly together. So I would really like to invite the team to come along to scrutiny. But like I said, not as a scrutiny, as a critical friend, that we can learn more about the great work that's being done. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you for your brevity. Alison, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I'll be very brief. I think just to reassure the executive and other members, The contract stands in the context, as Jodie said, of a drug and alcohol partnership, and we have cross-agency membership in that partnership. And drug and alcohol use is identified across our services in the cells, in our A&E departments, in primary care, and people are referred into the service. And the second thing is, of course, we will be happy to come back to scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, I was just going to say that I think that the views that have been expressed this morning suggest that perhaps a briefing for all members might be a better way to go, because I think Jill was not referred to actually scrutinising it, but more so that members get the information about a situation that affects every division right across Somerset, so that a member's briefing might be a better way to go forward if she's content with that.
I'll leave that up to the service to discuss with the chair of scrutiny. It's up to the chair of scrutiny what to put on the agenda, but whatever's the best forum for doing it. Thanks ever so much, Jill, for your question. Move on to Councillor Tom Power. Good morning and well, happy New Year, Tom.
Morning, happy New Year. I just wanted to say I agree with everything that's been said in this meeting today, and I think it was either Sarah or Heather said about the prevention within schools. But I want to just emphasise that I think schools are very important, but I think also to look at our colleges and our sixth forms, because obviously once they've left school, they're not monitored as much once they get a little bit more independent. So I think our colleges and sixth forms really need to be looked at as well. Thank you.
Yeah, really good point. And John Cook-Woodland. Hello, John.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I was just wondering if we're also working with our boxing clubs and our martial art clubs, because for some young people, that strict discipline regime and strong leadership can be really, really transformative. And I've seen it in the area that I represent. And seeing sometimes the turnaround in young people who goes to those clubs is just remarkable.
I hope that's a yes or yes answer.
It's a yes, and we'll be in touch. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much. And Lucy Drinnell. Hello, Lucy.
Morning, Chairman. Thank you. So my question is just a brief one. In terms of people you can't reach now, 3 years ago, almost to the day, I went and visited Turning Point in Yeovil because I was then the opposition lead for public health. And it was amazing. The work they do is phenomenal. And actually seeing the setup rather than imagining what it is made such a difference. But there are people who the service doesn't reach, who don't present or aren't presented to that service. And I wondered whether you would be doing some, or whether the Turning Point would be working towards trying to find more people. A brother of a friend of mine died over Christmas. He'd been a drug addict for a very long time. And he'd been through various services, I don't know which, but, you know, it doesn't always work. And I wondered what work they were doing to just try and reach out further. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it's a good point. So actually what we recognise is that the have an appointment and come in model doesn't actually work that straightforward for these complex cases, and what we really need to be doing is assertively outreaching to people. So there are certain groups of people that we're trying to really do that for, and they're the obviously in terms of prison leavers, rough sleepers, but there's also another group of people who perhaps aren't as well known to services, but who do sort of come through, they're known to services and they represent quite a lot of the time. So what we're trying to do at the moment is to try and keep a track of those people whose motivation levels are dipping and just try and be a bit more proactive engaging them. Evidence tells us that on average people come through treatment about 6 or 7 times, and I'm just so uncomfortable with that as a commissioner of the service, in that once we've got these people, I think it's partly about what do we do to keep them in treatment. There are some people who are unseen and not known to services, but it's resources really, because you need to be really proactively engaging with these people, and that takes time. That's relationship building. These are really traumatized, complex situations with people, so it's being able to devote more time to being able to do that assertive, proactive outreach to people where we can. But it's really difficult because the unmet need numbers are really high. I don't expect many of us have to look very far to know somebody. Already that's 3-4 personal stories in the room. So whether that's somebody who's struggling with alcohol, whether it is ketamine use, whether it's teenagers with cannabis, the profile, when we look at our treatment population, there's emerging trends with ketamine use. There's increasing rise in alcohol users. It's across the piece really in terms of those substances. So it's having the time and the resources to be able to dedicate more proactivity I think, and the connectivity with other services, because even if people won't come into treatment services, they possibly are known to their GP. So that's where the partnership comes in terms of what are we doing with primary care, what are we doing with adult social care to try and one Turning Point can't do that on their own.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for those questions. So I'm not seeing anybody else, so we'll move on to our recommendations if we're not seeing anybody else. Yeah, just in my notes, that figure of 5,000 for alcohol dependence and 2,000 for opiate and crack cocaine use. That was, I noted down as being those figures are stark, and the impact on those individuals, families and loved ones, on their communities is huge. I know I've kind of laboured the point about prevention costs, but it's the human cost that is the real tragedy that lies behind this. Anyway, let's get on to the recommendations so that we can get on with the job, so to speak. So the recommendations are: the executive is recommended to approve a direct award for the delivery of the specialist drug and alcohol treatment service to the current provider, ESTAS, in compliance with the Healthcare Services Provider Section Regime Regulations 2023 for 3 years, with effect from April 26, and with the option to extend for a further 3 years. Further, the following is advised. We haven't, as far as nobody wanted to go into the contract details, so we don't need to pass a resolution that's there. Do I have a proposer for that? Councillor Oakes. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wilkins. Can I see all those in favour, please? All those against? That is clearly carried. Can I just reiterate my thanks, Graham, Alison, Nina, and Jodie, temporary senior moment then. Thank you very much for all the work that you do around this area. It is so much valued by all of us at Somerset Council, and I think so many people throughout Somerset. Thank you very much. Okay, moves us on to agenda item 8, which is the adoption of policy on Somerset Council's recruitment and management of volunteers, pages 37 and 46 on your sheets. Councillor Theo Butt-Philip to introduce.
Thank you very much, Chair. We have heard today that the creation of One Somerset Council ought to have been done pretty much overnight with no effort, because it's a very simple task. I don't agree with that, but we've heard that. We are a massive and complicated organisation, and merging 5 plus the sort of leftover bits of merger from the 6th into one does take time. It is complicated. There are huge areas of work within the council that have to be brought into one way of working, where they've been done differently across the county. And the adoption of our volunteering policies is just one of those many examples. And this is why my colleague, the deputy leader, was talking about 8 years or so for many other councils that have been through this, because you've got to work through every single policy, every area of work. But now we come to the volunteering policy. We've inherited from predecessors different arrangements with volunteers, all of which I believe were making good use of volunteers, and we need to now create a consistent policy for that. So that's why we're here today, to adopt the policy for Somerset Council. Volunteers are incredibly important to our communities. Not just volunteering through Somerset Council, of course. I doubt there's anyone in this room who has not been a volunteer in some capacity in the past, most recently, and slightly remarkably, I think most people will find it, but I have only recently stopped running my local toddler group on a Wednesday morning. But it was good. It was good experience, which I'm sure there'll be transferable skills from that. Volunteering, whether it's through the council or through other VCFSE organisations in our communities is absolutely a fantastic experience for individuals. You get so much from volunteering, but it's also wonderful for our communities, the strength that can be added to our communities by the work that our incredible volunteers do. We've got over 1,400 volunteers active with Somerset Council. I don't want to steal too much of Jeff's presentation. He's done a very good presentation. I don't want to sort of, there's always a temptation to just pick out the best bits and say them and then say, right, over to you, Jeff. So I won't do that. But I think Jeff is going to tell us a bit about some of the key figures around our volunteers and why we're adopting this policy in the way it is. It is necessary in an organisation as large as ours that we have a significant number of checks and processes to go through. At the same time, we want everything to be proportional to encourage as many people as possible to be able to volunteer in the appropriate way and through the routes that are available. And I think this policy sets out how that is intended to work. So in case I forget later, and I may well come back later with some answers to some questions, but in case I forget, I want to say a massive thanks to all of our volunteers, both those who are currently active and those who have been active in the past. And I want to encourage everyone who is listening to look at the opportunities to volunteer with Somerset Council. You'd be amazed at the range of things that you can do and how much you can contribute to your communities and to people's lives. And also huge thanks to Jeff for the work that he has done on this policy. And I'll hand over to Jeff, who has a presentation for us.
Thank you, Theo. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for not stealing too much thunder. See if
you're a bit quiet, Jeff.
Am I?
Or is it?
Is that any better? How's that? Is that picking me up now? Okay, apologies. Slightly cronky back acquired over Christmas, so I will hunch slightly, but managed to avoid the lurgy. A little bit of a snapshot about the current position with volunteering, and thank you, Thea, for the introduction. We do currently have 1,400, just over 1,400 active volunteers, and we are ish nationally back to pre-pandemic levels of volunteering, but we still need more. So we are constantly recruiting volunteers all the time. Across the council, we've got 19 current services utilising volunteers in 70 defined roles, all of which I can talk about in detail if people have got time in it and interested. And we recruited just under 300 volunteers last year. The newest role this year, and I'm really pleased to see it's opened recently, is Ham Hill Volunteer Centre Visitor. There's a lot of opportunities in places like Ham Hill Environment and Climate Work, and we work very closely with services that are involved in that sort of activity. And the support that we give volunteers, because we are keenly aware that the way we retain volunteers is to look after them. So we survey them every year. We ask them how well we're doing. And that's a combination of the operational service that they work in or they volunteer in and the central volunteer team that looks after the central recruitment and support function. And we've consistently scored a minimum of 8 out of 10 over the last few years, and we aim to maintain that, if not improve it. The range of volunteer roles Theo touched on, there are a number of roles in our library services, and I'll highlight that one particularly, not just for the value that it brings individuals and the places that our libraries serve, but also our libraries have opportunities for volunteers who are under 18. And we have lots of conversation with voluntary organisations and with schools and education establishments running programmes like Duke of Edinburgh's Award. They quite often say they struggle for volunteer opportunities for under 18s. Actually go and talk to the library service. and that includes community libraries. Obviously, they are separate, but across the piece, library services make really good use for volunteers under 18s. Mentioned Ham Hill, wedding ceremony ushers. Who will want to volunteer to be part of somebody's memorable day? I just think that's lovely. That was a collective ah when that one came into the inbox last year, I think it was. Volunteer drivers, we have a shared programme with the NHS that Transporting Somerset run a volunteer driver scheme, getting people to non-urgent medical appointments and that sort of thing. That's been established for a good number of years and is a really, really well valued service, and it adds to the services that are provided by local car schemes. Across the arts and culture world, an enormous amount of volunteering activity happens, and we make use of that through Octagon Westlands and some of the other more local things that come and go as resources present. And we've already heard this morning people talking about the need to support those in vulnerable situations. Our Route 1 advocacy, independent visitors, they support some of our most disadvantaged and our most challenged children and young people. So it is absolutely vital that we recruit and maintain really highly skilled volunteers for those services. So I'm proud that we're able to continue doing that. I hope that's a very brief snapshot, and I'm happy to take questions if Theo can't field them.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and some really fascinating examples there of volunteering. Certainly since my own community of North Betherton, we became a community library when it along with a dozen or so others lost their funding a few years ago, and it's breathed real new life into that service, having it volunteer led, lots of different activities that are taking place that are meeting that need in the community for people to socialise and to connect with other people, as well as being a valuable resource in its own right. It's become kind of a centre where people can know that they can find other people and so on. And we've just taken on the country park at Stockmore, and I know a good number of volunteers are there. We've got a number of volunteers who work on a rights of way. So I think that'll be reflected across every division across Somerset with that. So thank you so much for all the leadership on that. I see we got Councillor Wilkins indicating, Councillor Shearer and Councillor Wakefield and Councillor Oakes.
Thank you very much. It's really important, our volunteers, and Bill has already mentioned rights of way, and I'd just like to just say that in my service, volunteers really do contribute to so much, and I have looked in specifically at our rights of way volunteers, but that's only one small part of the volunteers that work, you know, in my area, but they contribute over 22,000 hours of invaluable support. That includes work from our two Rambler working parties in Sedgemoor and Mendip. And we currently have nearly 400 rights of way volunteers across the county, which is just immense, and doing, I think, about 6 different roles, and sometimes across the roles as well. I won't go into details of that, and it's just incredible the work that our volunteers do for Somerset, and it's vital that we look after them. I mean, it's vital that we get this paper right. So I'm really pleased that you are looking so strongly at this and putting the work in, because without our volunteers, it would be very difficult to look after our over 6,000, kilometres of rights of way. But they are recognised, which I'm glad to hear about, and I know that that three of the rights of way volunteers were put forward for, but by parish councils for the council's chair awards, which they really deserved, and it's great to see that they are recognised, and they did receive awards from Councillor Best. But I'll leave it there because I could go on about the work that they do, but like you, no doubt.
Thank you, Richard. And I've got Heather next.
Hi, thank you. A couple of quick comments and then a question. Absolutely, I think it's great that you're getting back to pre-COVID levels of volunteering. That's amazing. Well, there or thereabouts, and it's good. 300 in a year is really good. And I love a policy framework that's 5 pages long. That is a very good thing. Well done. That was marvellous. Love those. And thank you for highlighting Route One. Route One volunteers deliver a statutory service in as much as all children are entitled to having an independent, children like care are entitled to have an independent visitor, to be a constant adult in their life, and also advocacy if they need it. So they do brilliant work, and I love those to bits. The only question I've got really is around, it's great to have this centralised, and I've met some of the team that work particularly on things like the volunteer drivers bit, but how do we manage to support the kind of the health and care elements of, say, driving to appointments, but not getting into competition with the local car services? We have one in Street in Glastonbury, for instance, and we all struggle to get volunteers. So how do we manage that really difficult thing about keeping the two things working without poaching people?
It's a constant challenge, and we do recognise that every volunteer involving organisation is recruiting people in Somerset. So to some extent we are in competition, but we do it in a collaborative way. We are one of the largest volunteer involving organisations in the county, but we're not the only one that's got that number of volunteers. I point to Somerset Wildlife Trust for some really big numbers and some quite impressive work. But we are part of that ecosystem. We recognise that, and there are mechanisms and relationships, networks and forums in place that mean that we work collaboratively, because the collective ambition is to grow the pool of volunteers, not poach volunteers from other people, because we don't like it when people poach our volunteers, so we wouldn't want to visit that on somebody else. So we're part of a county-wide programme called Volunteering for Health, which is NHS funded, led by Spark as our voluntary infrastructure provider, which is working to bring some collaborative improvements to that landscape to improve the lot of volunteers, recruitment processes, and to make it easier for all of us. But we do recognise that it's a constant battle.
Yes, well, I certainly welcome this, and I welcome the volunteers very much that work for the council and for the various activities that you've described, and probably others as well. It's something that we as an ageing county, I keep saying this, 25% of people over 65, it's so important that people keep active in the community. It's so important for their mental health, their physical health, and actually that habit of volunteering can be acquired at quite an early age. It doesn't have to wait until you're retired. But we are so lucky to have this huge amount of volunteering within the county, some of it for the council, but so many other services going on. And it's something that I would encourage everybody who's thinking about what they're going to do when they retire. I don't have any free time, but I'm sure other people do. I think it's something that's so important to say how valued it is across the county. I just wanted to check with you the point that I think I made this when we discussed it previously about the parish council and volunteers. You also mentioned footpath work. Parish councils do a lot of footpath work. They do a lot of work in their parishes, in my pet case, emptying drains and doing all sorts of things they probably shouldn't be doing, but they do. But they don't, I believe, fall under this policy. If you do fall under this policy and you are a volunteer for the county, I think you have to go through a process. And if you could just describe a little bit about what that is and why parish councillors don't come under that, if that's the case.
Thank you. Good question. Useful opportunity to clarify. The The policy relates to volunteers that are supporting Somerset Council's work. So if they are volunteering through one of Richard's services in Rights of Way, in Pete Hobley's team, then they are subject to all the recruitment processes and the need to prove identity and all of those things as part of our framework. If they are doing something similar for their local parish council, the relationship between those two bits of the system is there, but they are volunteering for the parish council. So the parish council will define its volunteer recruitment process and how it maintains records and how it looks after and supports and sort of directs the volunteers. So it is important to understand that organisational ownership, for a better word, and that responsibility. And as Theo mentioned, we're a big, complicated organisation, and for understandable reasons, we do probably a lot more due diligence on volunteers than some smaller organisations that haven't got adult and children's social care as part of their portfolio of services. So for I think understandable reasons, our recruitment processes can look daunting, I suppose, but we are as good as we can be at helping people through them. And we know, I think the quickest we've ever got a volunteer from first interest to boots on the ground is less than 3 weeks. But that does require people to fill in the emails, complete the forms and sort of work their way through the steps. It's the same as any recruitment process. Talking about volunteer parish councils, and Bill mentioned it earlier, particularly as we see more devolution deals done, more town and parish councils are taking on some larger spaces. We are talking via SailPen and through individual parishes to town and parish councils to help them develop their approach to volunteering. And we are very happy to share template documents and things like that, which then can be detuned to a proportionate point for whatever town and parish council the need. So if any of you are in contact with town and parish councils that are interested in that, please put them in touch. Thanks, sir.
Yes, to follow up. So those who volunteer for the council under your process, they are covered by our insurance and all those other sort of risk things. I think that's the thing you need to know, because if you're volunteering for a parish, they may have that, and they do think, certainly some of mine certainly worry about that a lot, risk assessment, but you just need to be a bit careful, because parish councils themselves are in fact volunteers. They don't get paid for what they do, but that's different from what we're doing, you know, what they're doing in their role is different. I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Indeed. And Graham.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to make the point about how important volunteers are to the council, but specifically looking at things from the environment point of view. Within the Green Estate teams, we've got 141 active volunteers. That's 10% of all the volunteers are actually working in Green Estates. And they're doing roles that include practical conservation and site management, wildlife surveying, dry stone warning, the teacher as well, assisting with events and community group activities, working at the Ham Hill Visitor Centre, which I'll come back to, leading health walks, litter picking and providing a site presence. I entirely agree what Councillor Wakefield said about the importance for retired people to remain active. And is there a better way to remain active than to go to Ham Hill and join the team? A little advert, we are still looking for volunteers to come and help at the brand new Visitors Centre, which not only is a beautiful building to look at, but also has great coffee. One of the things that struck me, just in case members haven't heard me say about the fact this is funded by two main sources, the largest being the National Lottery Heritage Project, but the equivalent, if we'd had to pay the staff for the work that have been done on the hill during the project time, would have it's essentially saved us £336,000. It makes a significant difference. If you're unclear about Ham Hill, it is the largest Iron Age hill fort in England, possibly in Europe or the world. But we're very proud of it, obviously, in South Somerset. But it is a place that always strikes me that whenever I go there, not only have we got the ranger team, but we've got these volunteers who work so hard and make such a difference in a lot of ways. And I know they're actually individually benefiting from it. But we as a council, this is added value. They do the things we can't afford to do, and they do it to a very high standard. And just to repeat that bit, if you want to learn how to do dry stone walling, come to Ham Hill and we can get you taught, and you can join my walling team. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe, I'm sorry, Theo, I was.
It would be remiss of me as a member of the Mendip Hills National Landscape Partnership Committee not to point out that other dry stone walling opportunities are available.
Excellent. I'm sure as a member of the Ecknall National Park Authority as well, you'll similarly contribute. Thank you very much. Is anybody else? Not seeing anybody. Councillor Jill Slocum was first.
Thank you, Leader. Just a quickie, really. Obviously, in my previous life, I learned about volunteers and the marvellous work they do. So thank you for the advert about obviously the stonewalling and everywhere else. That was really good. But I also think that, as you say, there are other people around. Bridgewater has many volunteers. North Petherton has many volunteers. All over the county has many volunteers. So it's brilliant. What I was worried about is that we have an email address there and we have a website. Does this exclude people who are not on email? I know a number of volunteers who have absolutely got the criteria, but who don't use email. Many of the churches, I just wondered whether information could be sent to churches where lots of volunteers, people offer volunteer work, but some of them are not on email. And I just wanted to ask, what are we doing about those people?
Thank you, Jill. Really good question. We do what we can as part of that bigger ecosystem. So we don't mail drop with leaflets all the churches and other places, but where there are local volunteer recruitment efforts underway, which are often done in person and on paper and through local media, we are part of that effort. And alongside the email address, we also have a phone number. So if somebody is interested in finding out what volunteering in Somerset Council looks like, give us a ring and we can talk people through it, and we will put you in touch with the right people.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. I didn't see it on your slide and I just was worried. That's all. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lucy.
Thank you, Chairman. So I wanted to raise a couple of points about volunteering. I personally have a concern that we may start to see volunteer numbers drop down. We know that often it's people who are retiring. We know that cost of living pressures might be meaning people are going to delay retiring. So I wondered whether we have anything in place to monitor those numbers on a sort of more regular basis to see what's happening. People also leaving retiring to either look after family members, things like that, you know, so you've got that sort of regular dropout. And then you've got the issue where we need to protect the volunteers that we have. We need to keep them on board. We need to make sure that the work that they do is pleasurable and sometimes it's not. So, for example, there's this expectation on my library committee. So I chair the local library committee, and every cleaning product that they have to have within the library, they have to have a sheet, an information sheet about that. Some of those are 12 pages long for a simple washing up liquid and stuff like that. If they run out of those products and they need to nip down to the shop down the road, they've got to go back, print off new sheets for the new washing up liquid that they've got, those kinds of things. If they get caught with the wrong stuff, it's that fear of being caught with the wrong stuff, not having up-to-date information, and then being in heaps of trouble for not updating their information. And so how it feels is that sometimes there's an expectation that they'll do everything and up to the same standard as an employee, as a paid worker, and have the same responsibilities. And there's not much that we can do to avoid that. But looking into those things, can there not be a locked cupboard or something that means that, you know, because this is stuff we all use in our houses, they're not using anything excessive or, you know, wildly dangerous. So that was one question that I had. And then Also, on behalf of the Library Committee, something that I pick up an awful lot is the IT. They can't always access the IT support because they don't have a landline. They have a poor signal. You've got to ring from the library with the problem that you have for the library. They can't get through. So they can't take there's something to do with only one person has a login for the county council laptop for the library, and so all the work is on that person there in particular. And I know that there's a very small library team here at the council, and they work really hard to support us, but that IT support, every single meeting it comes up, something to do with the IT, the emails not working, things like that. So if there's just anything that can be done to sort of help libraries a little bit more with that side of things, because we don't want to lose those volunteers because they're fantastic. But apart from that, not apart from that even, but you know, I really appreciate this, and I think it's really important that, you know, we have that that blueprint in place, I suppose. However, we just need to make sure that we are lightening the load wherever we can on volunteers.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lucy. I think without wanting to get into the details of cost data sheets and material safety data sheets, I think that's a conversation for another day. The expectation on volunteers need to be proportionate on the time that they can give and the skills that they can bring, and the heavy lifting in any role should be done by paid staff. And certainly from the council's point of view, volunteers add richness and value to our services, and they do not replace paid staff. So I think there's always a balance in there, and we've not so much within the council, but we've certainly noticed it in our voluntary organisations as other funded services have struggled. The expectation that volunteers would work within more disadvantaged places and respond to the needs of more people in challenging situations has put pressure on volunteers, which I think we need to be really cautious about. As far as I know, we are very good at that in the council because we are well organised and we put the time and energy and the capacity in to managing our volunteers effectively. That's not always the case in voluntary organisations. The library service is one of our best and busiest volunteer involving services. They do a really good job. If there are opportunities to improve what they do, I'm sure they'll be up for that conversation. So I'm very happy to pick that up beyond this meeting if there's something specific in there that we can pick up and we can take that to the library services staff.
Thank you. And Diogo.
Me.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one, which kind of follows on what Councillor Oakes touched on, is the financial value as well of our volunteers. I'm only wondering, because you do mention in the executive summary the 1,400 volunteers. Bridgewater Blake Museum, they've done their report, and had volunteer hours for last year of 4,165, which they quantified as a financial contribution would have been about 61k. So I'm just wondering, is there a way of quantifying the financial value and the hours of the volunteers? Because whilst absolutely we value them no matter what's in this report, but having that figure as well, is just that another added thing to recognise as well.
Very good question, and one that we wrestle with on a fairly regular basis, because the way to quantify it in absolute terms would be to get volunteers to do more admin, which is probably not what they signed up for, to be honest, particularly if they want to be out on the hills dry stone walling either at Ham Hill or on the Mendips. So there is a balance in there, and some services like Transporting Somerset with the volunteer drivers is very easy because they're rotated and the hours that they contribute can be tracked. It's not quite as simple in other services, so we don't have an absolute consistent figure across the county, but we have got a sense of what it looks like, and I don't want to give you a number now because I haven't got it to hand, but it is something that we work with services to improve their use of the tech and the encourage more volunteers to complete the admin. Basically, it's a timesheet. Tell us how many hours you've done if it's not obvious, and we can then work it out. But the national value for volunteering is currently £16 and I think 7 pence an hour, and that's a recognised social contribution for the work they do and the value they get from it. So we can extrapolate from that we get tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds a year of value from the volunteers. But we work to improve the recording of that all the time.
That's interesting. And if you extrapolated that across the whole VCSFE sector and other elements of the public, the value that, and I know many of us do all sorts of bits of volunteer work that we probably wouldn't even consider volunteer work. Liz.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to point out that when I was running an arts organisation, one of our performance indicators for our funders was not just number of volunteers, but also hours that they covered and the value of that. And it was one of the very important performance indicators. And it did continue to grow. And I can imagine now with national living wage so much higher than it was when I was working, that it would be a very considerable figure now. Thank you.
Not seeing anybody else indicating, so we'll move on to the recommendations that we approve the adoption of the draft volunteering policy and framework Somerset Council, proposed by Councillor Theobald-Philip, seconded by Councillor Wakefield. All those in favour, all those against, that's clearly carried. Jeff, thank you so much for bringing this paper before us and to your team and to everybody in every service. We've had a number of them highlighted this morning where we work with volunteers, and a massive thank you to all those people who volunteer for Somerset Council, and beyond that, everybody who volunteers in our communities that make them into thriving and flourishing places. Okay, thank you very much. Which brings us on to item 9, and we're 1 minute behind schedule, so I'm doing all right this morning, which is the Inspiring Innovation Quarterly Update, which is pages 47 to 64 on your sheets, and Councillor Theobald-Philip to introduce.
Thank you very much, Chair. Again, I'll try and keep this brief so we can catch up with that missing minute. This update covers the period from September last year to December last year, and covers some really key milestones within the Inspiring Innovation Transformation Programme. Not least, of course, the appointment of our strategic transformation partner, Newton Consulting, and the beginning of the work that they are doing with us. The creation of the full council diagnostic, which has provided an evidence-based assessment of opportunities to improve outcomes for residents and contribute to the financial savings required for sustainability. I think it's really important that whenever we consider this, we of course remember the massive financial challenge that we still face as an authority. We still have huge budget gaps to close, and we cannot lose sight of that. But we also have to keep as much focus on how we can deliver the best possible services for our residents. They're not two contradictory things. It is possible to deliver better services and spend less money, principally, of course, if we look at ways of prevention so that people can continue to live their lives without requiring that larger intervention later on. So I'll make that point. Over the 3 months this covers, we have developed and approved key business cases and streamlined the process for developing those business cases and for quality assurance to try and speed up both the quality and the pace of that process. Our work has commenced on the cultural development, as we recognise that is a key underpinner of the sustainability of the transformation and the legacy of this programme. This is a response to many factors, not least the financial situation we face. Also, the recommendations we are responding to from our external auditors. Also, the recommendations from the peer reviews that we have undertaken, and the transformation programme is getting us to a place where we will be able to be a sustainable council for the long term. We're not at that stage yet. We're about to head into the budget setting process for this year, and it is inevitable that over the next year, 2, 3, the transformation programme will play an ever more significant role in how we make that sustainable. So I would like to hand over to fill in the bits I've missed out to Head of Transformation and Digital, Carl Haggerty.
Thank you, Theo. You did cover most of the stuff that I was going to do, but there is a couple of things I would just like to add to what you've said. In addition, just as a kind of reminder that our Inspiring Innovation Programme is rooted in a kind of strong and strategic partnership approach, and is about taking whole council perspective, and this is very much about working with each other as a council and across the council and with our strategic transformation partner, Newton Consulting. This will require and depend on high levels of engagement with our relevant services so that we are all collectively aligned with what could be significant changes to how services are delivered going forward. And just to note that any partnership that shifts, and if our partnership does shift to a doing to approach, this will be unsustainable and will not allow us to deliver the significant changes and transformation that this programme requires. So at that point, I'd invite questions.
Yes, thank you very much. What's the situation with regarding to the business cases that are being prepared? Because we know that this is how it's going to work, that each service and will have business cases coming through to be approved, and that despite the much bandied around figure of £20 million, that is not all going to be spent in one go. And in fact, if certain areas don't need it or it isn't required for some reason, we won't be spending that money. It's a coordinated long-term programme. I get that. So I'm quite interested to know, I've looked at your slides that were with our papers, but I just want to know quite how we are actually going practically, because I know that Newton have been in, they've done a diagnostic, or they're doing it, I'm not sure they've finished. Can you just explain a bit where we are?
Yeah, sure. Oh, sorry, I realised I kept my microphone on at that point. Yeah, sure. So our current plan, Newton, our strategic partners, are actively working with service areas at the moment to ensure that the business cases are ready for our internal Inspiring Innovation Board on the 15th. And then subsequent pending approval there, they will then go through the relevant kind of formal governance processes, subject to satisfactory approval with our finance colleagues and inclusion into the budget and MTFS timeframes.
So can we know which services those are?
So we have children's, in terms of children looked after. That's one of the areas that we're looking at. We have prevention in working age adults. In adult services, we have housing following on from previous diagnostic work, and there is also a business case related to third-party spend.
Thank you. I just wanted to draw attention, page 52.22. I think there are some gems in this paper that it might be easy to overlook, and particularly for me there, following business cases also approved for further development work, so office space options appraisal. children's case management system. I know that that has been a matter of concern for some time. And this one, I don't want anyone to miss this, the place-based case management system for environmental health planning and GIS. I see these things as massively important for the future of this council. And I'm concerned that they're very slightly hidden away in one small paragraph that doesn't actually demonstrate how important they are to the future of the council. So I just wonder if you can give us any update, Carl, on where those are in the process, please.
Yeah, sure. So with relation to children's case management and the place-based case management, there is an internal timeframe currently working towards around April, where we will be considering both of those business cases for future investment if required. There is some additional capacity going in to support the kind of environment planning and GIS, the consolidated one, as part of an additional discovery to look at the opportunities, because there is broader opportunity to not just look at solving some of the immediate issues, but also looking to be a kind of national leader and working alongside MHCLG and building on some of the success that they've done through some of that open planning work. So we're exploring a whole range of opportunities to increase the scope in there. The office space options, again, there's some activity already underway at the moment, and we're looking for an update, I think in February, for our Inspiring Innovation Board on the options appraisals for some of our office locations. But noted on the only contained within a single paragraph. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Chair. And just to add to that, one of the key points around our transformation plan, and we must, and officers will certainly kind of remind members at every opportunity, this isn't a once and done. So the business cases that Sarah's just referred to and quizzed on, they are step one of that second phase of work. I think what paragraph 22 does, albeit incredibly briefly, is set out other elements of this. We shouldn't see this as simply looking at a series of individual business cases that would come through Newton Europe and their intervention with services. Moreover, we should see this as a broader intervention. So there are other references around modern data and AI and lots of other interventions that are coming through. So once we have hopefully approved a number of business cases through the MTFP process, hot on the heels of that, quite quickly will be another round of interventions, another round of areas of search, another round of intervention, because those will be necessary in order to close the gap. It is highly likely that we will not close the gap in one set of business cases. It will require further intervention, further investment, and equally, we're likely to see still some of those legacy LGR matters still being addressed, and they're the matters that Liz has just referred to in terms of IT systems. Yes, there will be financial opportunities that we can gain from that, but critically, they're about getting the house in order, as all local authorities that have been through LGR have to do, and some are still doing, and some are behind us, and some are ahead of us. And it's the nature of the systems that we have to go through. Thank you, Chair.
Do you mind if I just come back? Because I find it really useful with colleagues to illustrate the move to the one piece of software for revenues and benefits and how that covers business as usual, because post LGR, we are now the one council for all of the revenues and all of the benefits for Somerset. So we've got business as usual. Then we've got change, which is the move to the one piece of software that will then enable our whole team to work right across the whole of Somerset. And then there are the opportunities for transformation about how revenues and benefits can work with the other teams, public health, with housing, with adults and children's. And that's where the opportunities become really interesting. And I think that this just has such massive opportunity that sometimes it's difficult for us to realise just what is out there and what we can move towards. So I try not to get excited about new bits of software because they sit within the business as usual and the change. It's how people use them that actually leads to transformation. And that's the bit that becomes really interesting and exciting. Thank you.
I was just going to reiterate the point Alan made about this not being one and done. So when we think about the accommodation needs for the council, we've made some accommodation changes already, moving services out of Dean House and accommodating those within first the A block and then transitioning across into B block as we are now. We've got other sites to work our way through. And then there's the operational accommodation needs. So we've got a range of depots still situated around the county. And as we transition services through devolution to towns and parishes, that has a knock-on effect to our operational accommodation needs. So we will be coming back with individual business cases. It won't be a one and done activity on either the operational or the office-based accommodation. So you will see numerous business cases coming forward.
Thank you, Bill. And nearly every council up and down the land is going through transformation of some kind at this moment in time, particularly the larger ones and many involved in LGR. Almost every one of them has a transformation programme. Indeed, there's an expectation from government and an expectation from our auditors that we actually put in place a proper transformation programme to change the organisation. We must continue to focus on those business cases to get them right. And that 3-to-1 return that we're targeting, one of the speakers talked about 45 million of investment over a period of years, leading to 135 million pounds worth of financial benefit over a number of years, is critical to what we're doing. I've said before to this committee that when it comes to the MTFP, I'll be looking for solid business cases before they go into the MTFP. We don't put things in there on the basis of aspiration and hope. We do it on the basis of proven business cases, what's being done, how it's being measured, who's doing it, when it will be done by, what the milestones are, what the investment is needed. We need all of that information on a project by project basis to have the firmness required to go into the MTFP. But I'm confident that we have enough in that programme to be able to help us to manage our financial situation and move to a position of full financial sustainability. Transformation is critical to doing that.
Thank you. And we need all that information and at pace. Absolutely. I've got Joe and then Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Just there's obviously an awful lot of business cases that will be coming forward, and we've got a few in here. Can we get some notice of what's coming up next and the programme as it's moving forward? Because I think that we need to see perhaps a little bit of a bigger picture on the business cases. And I appreciate there will be an awful lot, but I would like to see what we've got in the pipeline, please.
Yep, we are currently in the process of developing a forward plan to answer that exact question and working with our strategic transformation partner as part of that phasing or waves. I can't remember the language that Alan used, but the kind of phasing model.
Phasing? I don't know. Yeah, excellent. I think we don't. Do we have a timetable of when we might see that yet?
I would expect by February.
Yeah.
So and Carl's absolutely right. The long-term forward plan around those broader business cases is around February, but of course members will see those initial business cases that Clive's just referred to, the ones that are capable of being included in the MTFP, and those that are muted to be future savings. So particularly those 5 areas that Carl mentioned earlier will be included as part of the scrutiny of the budget. So the first opportunity for that is scrutiny on the 28th of January. Then into executive, then into full council. We've always said this round of diagnostic would be the key output would be integration into the budget first and foremost, and then after that, that forward plan can then be developed into February.
Okay, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. I'm grateful for some of the clarification you've given. I just feel from the point of view of the public, they know that we've invested, or we are investing up to 20 million in this, and they need to see what we are doing. And I just don't think we're being as open in some ways as we could. I understand there are staff issues concerned. There are places where there may be transformation going to happen where they don't yet know, and you have to be careful how you deal with that in a large organisation like this. We don't want to demotivate people at all. We just want them, because it's a positive thing, and we all think it's positive. I just feel we just need a little bit more detail so that people know that the money we are spending is going to be spent well. I'm sure it will be, but also what areas we're looking at, what areas of the council we need to work on. And we're all aware of there are areas we need to work on, but I just think from a wider understanding of what's going on, we need to be a little bit more open about it. And I hope that's possible. Maybe it's not, but I just think, we've got people asking questions at every meeting. How are you doing things at pace? Well, we are working at pace, and pace doesn't mean running so that your shoes fall off and you can't breathe when you get to the end of it. It means getting there and actually still being alive at the end of it. So I just think people need to understand what that means in reality. So I was thinking about me running actually. No, I just think, a little bit more openness about it, and what you can tell us, please do tell us, because I think people want to know that.
Yeah, I think that openness and transparency point, I think, is really, really important as we go through this process quite reasonably. It attracts some public interest, and we need to make sure that we've got that available, but also that we've got some really good examples where we've already invested in transformation. I know, for example, the example of Magic Notes and the impact that's had in children's services, and rolling that now and out into adults has had a significant impact on the productivity of our teams in social work. And we need to highlight and celebrate the impact that is having on the organisation. Don't know whether you want to add, Carl?
Just kind of share the phasing approach that we've got in terms of the business cases that are currently in development and looking are active at the moment. Being kind of part of a phase one, the prioritization to identify those areas. I'm not sure, I don't think it's mentioned in here, but the kind of high level strategic logic to kind of prioritize those areas was around high demand, high cost, and looking at opportunity for feeding into the budget timeframe. What we know is the longer term kind of phase two, phase three, the bigger, longer term transformation, that is work that is still currently underway, identifying those areas in the organisation. But that's also about taking a whole council approach to those things. So not just looking into a single service. That's part of the transition that we're needing to make, is to lift some of that ambition to whole council impact and opportunity.
Okay. Not seeing any other comments from executive members. Diogo.
Thank you, Chair. 3 questions from me, if I may, please. Just on paragraph 27 of the report, which talks about the return of investment needed by 31st of March 2030 to deliver a minimum of 135 million of savings. It says on here that at present there remains a risk that the lack of pace and suitably ambitious transformation scheme proposals will result in this target not being met. So my two questions from that particular paragraph is, in terms of pace, I wondered how are management or staff working with the transformation partners or the programme, and what is that working relationship like? And is there any, is that working relationship, is there any impact on the pace with that working relationship? Perhaps there isn't, perhaps it's all going great, which is perfectly good, thank you. The second one is around the suitably ambitious proposals, which is one of the risks mentioned. Just if you could explain that a bit further for me, please, because I thought we were paying the consultant to suggest those sorts of things at pace for us to deliver what we need to deliver. So just wondering why that's a risk and why that may not be coming forward yet. And the third and final question is really around the baseline costs. Will we see those baseline costs when those business cases come to scrutiny or executives, so that we can clearly measure the difference in what we've been able to achieve or not been able to achieve, please?
Clive, do you want to pick that one up first?
Thank you, yes, Chair. On the last one, first of all, baseline costs is really critical. You can only gauge the value added by the transformation partner if you know what the baseline cost is to start with and where you've moved to. So understanding the baseline is a critical part of everything we do. So hopefully that just reassures you on that particular point. In terms of pace, I've been involved with transformation programs in different large authorities now for, I think the first one I did was 14 years ago. So I've seen these many times, and inevitably transformation programs take a while to get the momentum needed to be able to then start to move into delivery phase. So you start with the ideas generation, you turn that into concepts and are they going to work, into business cases, how are we going to deliver it, get the team on the ground to deliver, and then deliver. That's why transformation programs take a number of years to really get going. I think we're on target. We're behind where we wanted to be, I think it's fair to say, for a number of reasons. But I think we're moving pretty swiftly now. And that relationship with the transformation partner remains a very strong one. The team sit next to me, and I can see the work they're doing all the time. And I and the rest of the directors are engaged with Newton Europe as the transformation partner on a regular basis. So I think the pace is starting to move. I'd have preferred to have been in a better place to put more into the MTFP for next year. Set strict criteria for what goes in there, but nonetheless I can see a way to getting that 135 million of benefit. When we say that we at the moment lack of pace, I can't give you the assurance that it's all there because we haven't yet developed the business cases for them, and we need to move into that situation where all of those business cases are developed. We need to move into a situation where we're using people like our transformation partner to give us the ideas, not just about where the service needs to go. We've got talented directors who can do that, but how we can get there, because they can bring the experience of where they've worked in other authorities and say, have you thought about doing it that way? You think about doing it that way. And it's that kind of ideas generation that transformation is all about. So yes, I think we're making the progress now. I think it's slower than where we wanted to be. I think we're starting to get the ambition there now. We only need to look at things like the MJ Awards, the Municipal Journal Awards, or Local Government Chronicle to see some of the organisations who are leading the way in terms of transformation and some of the thinking that they've got. And we're learning constantly from others around the country. One of the benefits of being one of 317 councils in the country is that somebody somewhere is doing something that we're not doing, and we can learn from it, and that's a fantastic thing to be able to do. So we're trying to pick up all that learning as we go along. So hopefully that gives you assurance that, whilst there are reservations in there, and when you see my Section 25 report on the robustness of the estimates that goes with the budget next year, I will be reflecting this as a risk in there. It undoubtedly is a risk. We've got to keep going on that pace and that pressure and keep going, because transformation is what will get the organisation back into a financially sustainable position.
And just to build on that, obviously, question 3 has been as comprehensively answered as it can be. It's a very simple question. We need the baseline data. The working relationship is a good one. I think it's been very productive. I certainly don't think that's having a negative impact on pace. On pace, I will think that pace is not sufficiently fast until we've finished. There'll never be a time when I don't want us to be moving faster until, if ever, the work is done. But that imagines a sort of steady state council in 5 years' time where we say, right, it's all done. I'm not sure that's the reality of the modern world. But on the point about the risk of suitably ambitious proposals, I think so. It sort of goes to the point about openness that we were talking about a little while ago, and this comes up quite a lot within council discussions. We're very keen to highlight what the risks are, and there's always a risk that in doing that, you always focus on the most negative potential interpretation of that. We're highlighting what risks are. That doesn't mean they're all going to come to fruition, but it means that we need to guard against them. And the risk that we don't have sufficiently suitably ambitious transformation scheme proposals, what that reflects is we do not yet have the proposals which will completely close the 135 million gap by 2030, nor would we reasonably expect, by 2031, nor would we reasonably expect that at this stage. So it will always say that until we've actually got business cases in place that say this is how we're going to do it, and that's how it will be. The gap will be zero. It's not in itself something that we need to be deeply worried about. It's something that needs to concern us until that's all there. But you wouldn't expect at this stage in the programme to have the full 135 million mapped out, because that's just not how it works. But there will be, significant significant contributions to closing that gap coming forward in coming weeks.
Carl.
Just to add to that, I mean, one of the additional impacts that we're seeing as kind of linked to the cultural development work is the real push and challenge of working with us to raise our ambition to work more at a whole council frame. So a lot of the business cases that are coming through at the moment primarily will be kind of grounded in service by service. Part of that cultural development is helping us reframe to what is the whole council transformation opportunity. Whilst they have experience in that, the risk is we don't want them doing that to us, that they need to support us to work across the organisation to link those things up. So examples with some of the children's stuff that we're developing at the moment, how do we bring other parts of the organisation into that work and increase the impact and increase the opportunity for residents and savings at the same time. So part of that cultural development work already is seeing that impacting, actually holding us accountable a bit more around a whole council approach, which is, it's from when I joined the council in May and shifting from what was post the restructure, very challenging time for the organisation, moving through now what was quite a siloed, people being quite focused on their service areas, getting things running, to now actually looking up and looking across the organisation to say, how do we have a collective children's transformation programme? How do we have a working age adults programme, not adult services programme in isolation? So it's very much about how we bring that to everyone. So it's just as much Chris's programme for adults as it is Mel's, for example.
Thank you. Thank you for those answers. I think, yeah, I'm hugely reassured around that. I remember when we had the peer review team come back in and we had a challenge on pace. And I said, there is a significant difference for me between pace and haste. So absolutely, we need to get the pace, but we need to be careful about the haste. And what I'm seeing, which is really, really good, is some of this cross-fertilisation of ideas between different parts of the council and different service areas where ideas are being shared, people are being innovative, and that's coming from within the council, working in partnership with our transformation partners to be able to produce the results that we need to see. So I do have confidence that this process is producing a timely, at pace solution to the council's issues. Okay, very briefly, Lucy, because we're just on the buffers now.
Thank you. So what I want to know is, when will we start to see figures? So actual sort of amounts start to see, is that going to be in sort of next year's budget? Does that come through in terms of updates that we get where you can say we have now identified this much saving in this area? When does that happen, or does it happen? Is that not how this works?
Some sort of version of tennis. What's that?
I'll jump in then and say yes, both. But you can pick who you want to.
Both through quarterly financial reporting, but also through transformation programme reporting, we will be identifying for every project the investment that goes in each year, the saving that comes out in each year, and therefore the total return on investment as a whole. So you'll see that as part of the reporting in two ways, both through quarterly financial reporting and through the transformation programme reporting.
And very quickly, when would we expect to start seeing those figures coming through?
As soon as possible this year. We're just developing that format now for you. So the next reporting should be available, and it needs to be, because you need to be convincing yourself that that investment is being properly spent, and it needs to tie in with MTFP assumptions going forward as well.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. So we need to move on to our recommendations for this, which is executive are asked to consider and provide feedback on the progress that's been made. Does that that doesn't need a proposal and a vote, I don't think, does it? It's just it's a to note. So thank you so much, Carl. And we've not got Sarah. Well, okay. Yeah, just to be clear, that is not actually conjuring tricks. That is actually a formal part of our Gold Command structure training to be there. Sorry, that's it's one of those terms when you think that could be misinterpreted very easily. Carl, thank you so much for coming and bringing us that report. Thank you to Sarah, and pass on our thanks to the whole team on that one. So that sort of concludes our business today. I just wanted perhaps to clear up maybe a misunderstanding that I think's transpired during this meeting. I was very clear that even though we did increase council tax with bespoke referendum principles last year, we are still significantly less than the unitary average. We are still significantly less than our neighbouring councils like Dorset, Cornwall, Devon and Wiltshire, and that is because of the historic decisions made by legacy councils to freeze council tax 2010 to 16. That means that we are in that financial emergency of having to close that gap. Our finances do still remain fragile, and we are in discussions with government around further exceptional financial support for this year. We have given illustrative figures. If the government were to agree to a 5.9% increase above the cap limit, that would bring Somerset Council in line with government's figures of 2060 for Band D property when they're calculating grant funding. That is not the same as a formal request to government. We have not asked for that. We are in discussion, in negotiation. To misrepresent that is unhelpful, and I do have to question the motives of misleading people in that way. Any potential increase will be discussed and will be decided through our democratic processes. No decisions have been made, no formal requests have been made. We will continue to lobby government on behalf of Somerset residents. We will continue to urge government to accelerate the promise for for council tax reform and for their social care reforms, and we would appreciate the support of all 7 of our MPs in doing so and getting a fair funding settlement for Somerset Council for this year, but also to look at this broken model of financing local government, that we are still funding social care out of a tax on 1991 property values, which is effectively where we've ended up, is the fundamental difficulty that we all face. And the delays that we've seen to those reforms are the problem. Now, we can all chuck ammunition at each other if we need to, but that is the fundamental truth, that this council has that financial gap. We are doing our utmost to close it. But while we are doing so, we are doing some phenomenal work. If you look at the work that we've gone through today around the drug and alcohol service, around our volunteering programme, and around how we are proceeding at pace with transformation, we are still delivering in the face of a fragile financial position. I'm incredibly proud of the work that our officers and our members are doing in incredibly difficult circumstances to keep a sustainable council for our residents, maximising the services that we present. I'm disappointed to hear that there are views that are saying that anything other than that is happening. It is absolutely essential that we deliver for the people of Somerset, so that we can get that flourishing, resilient economy and that healthy and caring society that we want to build as part of this council. Thanks ever so much, everybody, for your hard work today.